All right. This is from MSNBC. It says, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced a bill in Congress on Friday that would ban gender-affirming care for transgender minors across the country. Gender-affirming care, also known as mutilation and sterilization of children. It's the most sweeping and draconian piece of legislation conjured by an ever more radicalized and violent anti-trans movement. Literally no examples of violence are provided ever. A violent movement, but not one example of violence. They can't provide one example of an, quote, anti-trans person acting out violently against trans people. Not one example. Can't do it. Doesn't exist. I'll tell you one thing. You can find examples in the reverse. While the bill sports only 14 Republican co-sponsors, its passage would likely become a priority if the GOP were to retake Congress this fall. That's another humiliating statement about the Republican Party that only has 14 co-sponsors. I mean, the Marjorie Taylor Greene bill, and it doesn't matter how you feel about Marjorie Taylor Greene personally. It makes no difference. This bill, every single Republican in Congress should support it. We should demand that they all support it. The bill is very simple, and it's exactly what the federal government needs to do. It is exactly what we need Republicans in D.C. to be doing or trying to do. It would simply ban doctors from castrating or mutilating kids. Period. That's it. You can't do it. It continues. Since the 2020 presidential election, reactionary forces in the U.S. have increasingly become more focused on trans issues. Physicians and staff members at Boston Children's Hospital were threatened last week by a far-right gender-critical internet mob that spread lies about the facility's work with transgender adolescents. The harassment campaign was kicked off by Shaya Reichik, who runs the anti-LGBTQ social media account Libs of TikTok, along with anti-abortion and anti-LGBTQ media personality Matt Walsh. Both told the lie that the hospital was performing hysterectomies on children. Well, that in and of itself is a lie, because that's actually not what I said. Let me ask you something. What if there was someone out there who kept a log of every single thing you did every minute of the day? I bet you'd be pretty displeased with that. Well, what if I told you that's exactly what happens every time you go online? Your internet provider, like AT&T or Comcast, is allowed to store logs of every website you've ever visited, and they can legally sell this data to anyone. That's why I always use ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN reroutes your internet connection through their secure servers, so your internet provider can't see or log what you do online. Now, many of you might be wondering, well, if I'm routing all my data through a VPN, doesn't that mean that the VPN can see what I'm doing and log my data instead? And you're very astute. You're right to think that way. Many VPNs claim to have a no logs policy, but they've got logs all over the place. ExpressVPN, that's not the case. They've got no logs at all. It's a no log guarantee. And you don't have to take my word for it. ExpressVPN, or their word for it actually, ExpressVPN is so confident in their no logs claim, they even had one of the biggest assurance firms audit their technology, and they confirmed, yep, no logs. Stop letting people keep logs of what you do online. Visit expressvpn.com/Matt Walsh right now and find out how you can get 3 months free. I didn't say that the hospital is definitely performing, quote unquote, gender affirming hysterectomies on children. There's certainly evidence that they have, reason to think that they have. But what I actually said is it's almost irrelevant, because we know they're doing it to 18-year-olds, which is still horrifying. And by the way, if an 18-year-old is not mentally competent to sign on the dotted line for a college loan, and is so incompetent that we have to forgive those loans after the fact, that merely presenting the option to an 18-year-old is a scam. Well, if that's the case, then but an 18-year-old has the mental faculties necessary to agree to get a hysterectomy for cosmetic reasons? Well, that makes no sense. But what I actually said is that's what I said. That even if it's at 18, it's still horrifying. And besides, whether or not they're doing this particular mutilation procedure on kids, whether or not they're doing that, we know that they're performing cosmetic double mastectomies on kids. We know that they are chemically castrating kids. We know that. So that's what I said. So in accusing me of lying, of course, MSNBC is lying. Not that they care. There are any standards here at all. We did send them something, saying they need to retract this, but there's just already for the media. We know that there's very little accountability, and when it comes to anything in the trans world, as we've seen, they have full license to just say anything they want to say. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how far-fetched it is. Makes no difference. If you want to join my exclusive fan base, or a cult, that's what it is. We're forming a cult. Then all you got to do is click the subscribe button and ring the bell below this video to stay up to date with all my content. And if you want even more, you can watch or listen to my show at thedailywire.com, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Looking forward to welcoming you to the Sweet Baby Gang.